Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, pro physique athlete. Today I'll be sharing with you a full science-based hypertrophy program based on the push-pull legs Arnold split. This is a unique split that combines push-pull legs and the Arnold split into a 6-day setup. Push-pull legs divides your body up into 3 main sessions. On push days, you train muscles involved in pushing movements, like your chest, shoulders, and triceps. On pull days, you train muscles involved in pulling movements, so your back and biceps. And on your leg days, you train your quads, hamstrings, glutes, and calves. In the Arnold split, your body is split up into chest and back, shoulders and arms, and legs. Both of these splits have some unique benefits and disadvantages. And the idea is that creating a hybrid split between these two can negate some of the disadvantages. I'm going to be sharing a full 6-day hypertrophy program based on this push-pull legs Arnold split. This is a low volume program, so best designed for a beginner or someone who responds well to low volume. We'll start off with a program walkthrough where I share everything you'll need to know to run the program yourself, including exercises, sets, and reps. After that, we'll talk about the weekly setup, or how I'd prefer that you set up the days across the week. Then finally, we'll talk about pros and cons of this push-pull legs Arnold program.
Let's do our program walkthrough. So this is Dr. Swole's push-pull legs Arnold program. It's a low volume program well designed for a beginner or someone who responds to low volume. We've got pull day, push day, leg day 1, chest and back, shoulders and arms, and leg day number 2. Here are the exercises and there are the sets and reps. Down here we have the total number of sets for each workout so you have an idea of workout length. And down here we have our total muscle group weekly set volumes. You will see immediately that this is a low volume program. We start off the week with pull day and we have barbell rows to start off, 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps. After that we go into neutral grip lat pull downs. These are for the back and I'd recommend you choose a grip width that really allows you to get a good stretch and contraction in your lats. 3 sets of 10 to 15. Then we have some shoulder work, dumbbell upright rows. These train the side delts as well as the traps, so I'm counting them as a pulling movement to sneak in a bit of extra side delt volume. 3 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have cable lateral raises, also for the side delts, 3 sets of 8 to 12. And finally some ab training, 3 trisets. So for a triset, you're going to do 3 different exercises, 1 set of each back to back with no rest, and that counts as 1 tricep. So you'll do 3 of those. Next, we have push day, and we start off with bench press for the chest. 3 sets of 5 to 8. After that, we have dumbbell flies, also for the chest, 2 sets of 10 to 15. Then we have cable press downs for the triceps, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Following that, we have some bicep work, dumbbell curls, 3 sets of 6 to 10. And lastly, rope hammer curls, also for the biceps, 2 sets of 8 to 12. Notice that I've actually completely swapped my bicep and my side delt training. By moving bicep work off of pull day onto push day, you're able to train your biceps when they're fresh. Moving side delts over is also helpful to even out the day length. After that, we have leg day number 1, and we start off with squat for the quads, 3 sets of 5 to 8. After that, we have Romanian deadlifts for the glutes and hamstrings, 3 sets of 6 to 10. Following that, barbell hip thrusts, also for the glutes and hamstrings, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Note that while RDLs and barbell hip thrusts both train the glutes and hamstrings, RDLs are more hamstring dominant and barbell hip thrusts are more glute dominant. So you'll see that I like to put in a mixture of different movement patterns into any given workout. Then we have leg extensions for the quads, 3 sets of 12 to 20. And finally, single leg calf raises for the calves, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Next day up, we have chest and back, and we kick this off with weighted chin-ups for the back, 3 sets of 6 to 10. If you're just starting out and you can't do chin-ups, you can start off with bands to help you or an assisted chin-up machine. But I really want you to think of weighted chin-ups here as a main movement. I have them first in the workout, so they're given priority, and I want you to work on getting strong on these. Next, we have incline dumbbell bench press for the chest, 3 sets of 8 to 12, and then single arm dumbbell rows for the back, 3 sets of 6 to 10. Single arm dumbbell rows are actually one of my favorite back movements, but you'll see that I don't often include these in my advanced programs just because you're going to be too strong for the dumbbells at your gym. Next, we have dumbbell upright rows, 3 sets of 10 to 15 for your side delts and traps. And finally, some more ab training, 3 trisets. You'll see that I don't include ab training in a lot of my programs. This is because most people don't actually need direct ab work. Your abs do get trained in most heavy compound lifts, but I do think it's reasonable to train them if you're a beginner. Your program is pretty low volume as it is, and especially since we're training 6 days per week here, I'm assuming that you have lots of time. Next, we have our shoulder and arm day, and we start off with weighted dips. You might think of these as a chest movement, but you can count them for chest and triceps. So I'm putting them over here, counting them as an arm movement, 3 sets of 5 to 8. Then we have dumbbell overhead press, 3 sets of 6 to 10, followed by incline bicep curls for the biceps, 3 sets of 6 to 10. You'll notice that by moving our heavy accessory pressing movement like weighted dips over here, off of chest day onto shoulder and arm day, you're actually getting a 3 times per week frequency for your chest. I really like spreading out the volume this way, and and it allows you to focus on hitting your dips hard and working on strength. Again, if you can't perform dips yet, you can use bands or an assisted dip machine. Next, we have easy bar skull crushers for the triceps, 3 sets of 12 to 20. You can superset your skull crushers with your incline bicep curls on the same bench. Next, we have machine preacher curls for the biceps, 2 sets of 10 to 15. And finally, cable lateral raises for the side delts, 3 sets of 12 to 20. And you'll see that I've actually split up my delt work, putting a little bit of it onto chest and back day. This should not be a problem for side delt recovery. Side delts recover really quickly, so training them 2 days in a row won't be an issue. And I'd rather you have more opportunities to train your side delts when they're fresh. Next, we have leg day number 2, and we start off with the squat for the quads, 3 sets of 5 to 8. And you'll see that we have squats twice in the week in the same rep range. Here, I'm assuming that you're a beginner, that is within your first 1 or 2 years of serious training. When you're at this level of experience, programming the same movement with higher frequency can help you build strength more quickly. If you're just starting out, I'd actually recommend that you try and increase the weight a little bit every workout. This will be the fastest way to progress, and it'll also be good for building your technique. Next, we have deadlifts, 3 sets of 5 to 8. And here you'll notice that I have deadlifts coming after squats. The idea here is that heavy deadlifts may fatigue you for your squats, since having a tired lower back is going to impact your heavy barbell squatting. But tiring out your legs and squatting won't affect your deadlift as much. So you can see that I am giving priority to squats in this program. Next, we have hack squats for the quads, 3 sets of 8 to 12. We follow this up with leg curls for the hamstrings, 3 sets of 10 to 15. And finally, machine calf raises for the calves, 3 sets of 10 to 15. You'll notice that our biceps actually get trained 4 times per week in this program. They get trained indirectly on our back movements, and then they get trained directly with our direct arm training. Also, our triceps get trained 3 times per week, indirectly with our pushing movements and directly with our arm training. These advantages come from splitting up your arm training from your pushing and pulling days. We'll talk about this more in the pros and cons section. What program do you guys want to see me cover next? Let me know in the comments below.
All right, now that you've seen the program, let's talk about the weekly setup. Here's my preferred layout of day. We have pull day, push day, leg day, chest and back, shoulders and arms, legs, and rest. Let's talk about my reasoning for this setup. The first thing to note is the ordering of our push-pull leg setup. This is not actually set up as push-pull legs as it's traditionally written. I have pull day first and then push and then legs. The reason here is that you want to spread out axial fatigue as much as possible. Axial fatigue is produced when you lift heavy weights that put compressive forces on your spine, like with squats, deadlifts, and heavy rows. So we want to spread our heaviest back movements out from our legs as much as possible. You might also notice that we do train back on this day over here, and this is why when you look at my exercise selection, you'll see that I placed our heaviest row on this pull day. Now, on the same argument, you want to minimize the amount of times you have back coming after legs. This is because a tough leg day can fatigue you for your upper body training the next day, but not so much the other way around. This can be a problem because your leg training can impact your back training come right after. And you'll notice that this does happen once in this push-pull legs Arnold split, and that is a disadvantage. This split, as well as the push-pull legs and Arnold splits on their own, do best in a 6 days per week setup, and this is because you get a built-in twice per week frequency for each muscle group. And I usually do recommend to aim for at least twice per week frequency. Note that this doesn't matter as much for a beginner or someone who's training with low volumes like in this program. However, I still think that it's a good idea for you to get into the habit of this higher frequency. You'll notice that I placed a rest day after legs, and in general, I like placing rest days or at least easier days after my toughest sessions. This is because your productivity on the next day after a tough leg day is probably going to be decreased. I also do want to point out here that most beginners don't actually need to be in the gym 6 days per week. Since you don't need that much volume to grow, you can get away with packing that volume into fewer days. I think a lot of beginners will do fine with 3 or 4 days in the gym per week. I wrote this program just for someone who actually wants to try out this split and who just enjoys being in the gym 6 days per week. But it's important not to burn yourself out trying to follow some advanced program early on. Remember, long-term sustainability and consistency are king in bodybuilding. Okay, now let's talk about the pros and cons of this push-pull legs Arnold split. Starting off with the pros. First of all, you get to train your shoulders and arms when they're fresh at least once per week. This, in my opinion, is one of the biggest advantages of the Arnold type setup. That is, you get a dedicated day where you get to hit your shoulders and arms when they're fresh. In most science-based bodybuilding splits like push-pull legs and upper-lower, your shoulder and arm training comes after your heavy pushing and pulling movements. Since your delts, biceps, and triceps are used in those movements, those muscles will be fatigued by the time you get to them at the end of your workout, and they won't perform as well. That is, you won't be able to perform as much productive volume, especially if you look at volume from the perspective of sets times reps times weight lifted. A lot of naturals are weak in terms of their shoulders and arms, so I think this is a great thing. Next, with this split, you get chest and shoulders not always back to back. Probably the biggest criticism of the Arnold split is that your chest and shoulder training comes back to back. This isn't that big of a problem if you're careful with your exercise selection and you know how to auto-regulate. That is, you can modify your training on the fly depending on how you're feeling. And in fact, it probably wouldn't really matter if you're training with low volumes like in this kind of setup. But if you already have shoulder problems and you find that it gives you issues, then it's nice here that you don't have so much pressing back to back. Notice that when you have hybrid splits like this, a lot of the pros will actually just kind of be watered down versions of the advantages that you get from that pure split. So it's kind of a middle ground. Next pro is that you get a higher frequency for your bicep and tricep training. And you'll notice that I've manufactured some higher frequency for the arms and for the shoulders by modifying the split even further. These small muscle groups tend to do well with higher frequencies. Finally, you get some priority for your accessory presses since you have that dedicated shoulder and arm day. You'll see that in this program, I've actually made weighted dips a priority movement coming first in your workout. Usually movements like this would get bumped to after your bench pressing. When you have a straight up shoulder day or a straight up arm day, I would strongly suggest that you use those days to lever in heavy accessory pressing movement. Things like overhead presses, close grip bench presses, and weighted dips. This is because you'll be able to take some of the stress away from your main pushing days onto a shoulder and arm day, which would normally be your lightest workout of the week. You won't be as fatigued on the days that you took those movements from, and you'll be fresher to hit those movements on your shoulder and arm day. Okay, now let's talk about the disadvantages of this push-pull legs Arnold split. Starting off, this program has some uneven days. Typically with push-pull legs, your pull days are going to be the shortest just because you don't have as many muscles to train. All you have are your back and biceps. You'll notice that in this split, your leg days are by far your hardest days, and your shoulder and arm day is going to be significantly easier than your other workouts. You'll see that I did try to address this problem by moving around some muscle groups and adding in abs onto our shorter workouts. Next disadvantage here is that your chest work comes back to back later in the week. This is an issue that comes out of putting heavy accessory pressing movements on your shoulder and arm day after chest and back. You'll see here that I've tried to choose accessory movements that are significantly different movement patterns from the presses that come the day before. Dips are quite a bit different than an incline bench press, so you can get around this problem with careful exercise selection. I also actually kind of like how this gives you a built-in higher frequency for your chest training. What this does mean is you'll have to be careful with auto-regulation. So if you're really sore going into that shoulder and arm day, you might have to take it a bit easier on some of your accessory pressing movements. Finally, with this push-pull legs Arnold split, your chest and back day comes after legs in the middle of the week. As I mentioned, this is a disadvantage since if you're really fatigued after a leg day, you may not perform as well on heavy pressing and pulling movement. I did order the days in a way so that this only happens once in the week though. I will be sharing the full Excel file of this program in my Facebook group. So if you want to get the program, join my Facebook group. The link will be in the description below. Join the group and you can download the program for free. If you want to see another example of a program built off of the push-pull legs Arnold split, check out this video where I share another 6-day hypertrophy program based on the split with higher volume. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and we'll see you next time.